Hi there and welcome. My name is Courtney McCracken, and I am so grateful that you've joined us today. I work here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital with our communications and outreach department. We've got several amazing guests today that make up our panel. And as you know, the topic is volunteer appreciation, prepare for Volunteer Appreciation Week and beyond. So we know this is an important topic for volunteer managers, and that volunteer appreciation is really a practice that happens all throughout the year. And today we've got our amazing panelists joining us, Elizabeth Donovan, who is our networks liaison here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital. We've got Maya Price representing our Get Connected success team. And we've got Gina Edwards from the Heart of Illinois United Way making up our panel. Also from our networks team, we've got Nate Barnes, who's going to be managing our chat box, and you can ask questions there as we go through the presentation and the panel discussion. So we're all going to work together to keep this like a really beautiful, healthy, respectful space, knowing that we've got people from all over representing all different types of organizations, some folks who might be brand new to volunteer management, and those who've been doing for this a while, and everything in between. And so that's what we're here. We're here to support volunteer managers, and we're excited to be in community with you. And with that, what I'll just say, do a little quick flyover of what's going to happen during our time together. I'm just going to be emceeing this whole conversation, but Elizabeth Donovan is going to do a short presentation on just like the basics of volunteer appreciation. And then we've got our panel discussion. And I've got some questions that I prepared for the panelists, but we also want to see some questions from the group as well. So with all that to say, I would love to go ahead and turn it over to you, Elizabeth, so that we can get this volunteer appreciation party started.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right, I am going to try to get share screen going, and I'll get this PowerPoint started for us. So if everyone is seeing the PowerPoint, and I think I'm on the very last slide. There we go. All right. So Get Connected webinar, as Court so lovely put together, volunteer appreciation. How do we think about things for right now? And then how do we plan things that can go beyond this moment in time of April being that chance to really spotlight our volunteers? So some of what we want to focus on is, and I thought this was just such a powerful quote, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that is so powerful. And it's a lot of what we're going to talk about as we kind of bring in some practical ideas, but also different ways that Gina has approached things with her experience, what Maya has done both in her role with our team, but also her previous volunteer coordinator experience. How and what was it that was just powerful? And how did you help a volunteer really feel something? I think we've talked in some previous webinars about why are our volunteers coming? Because they want to feel connected, because they want to build relationships, because they want to give back. You know, what does that look like? And how can we make them feel what they're coming to feel? So what are we covering? Just overall, our volunteer appreciation. We're going to talk about how you can communicate volunteer impact. That's the beyond part. How do you keep something rolling that you're starting at this moment in time? And then we'll have hopefully a really robust panel discussion. If as I'm going through some of this, and I am going to fly over it real fast, if you guys see some things that you're like, ooh, that's really interesting, or have you ever tried that? Don't hesitate to drop those questions in. Nate's going to be looking for those in the chat, and then we'll kind of get those moments for those questions we brought to the panelists as well, like Court alluded to. So here we go. One size fits all. I think this is a slide that we all know, but it's a piece to really kind of think through when you think about a programmatic approach to appreciation. So I throw these up there to say, you know, I think even in the panelists represented here today, we were talking about this when we were preparing. What do we like and what do we not like? And a lot of that goes back to who we are and our personas. We have, you know, just thinking about our team, we have team members that love to serve, they love to support, they love to be under that radar, and they do not ever want to be up on a stage with everybody clapping for them. That's like their nightmare. But then there's that other side of the house that loves celebration, and they're always like, we should throw a party. And then the person who likes to fly under the radar is like, why? Why would you do that to me? So there's these pieces that we want to think through. What can we build that's sustainable for a couple different volunteer types? And so that's that reflection part, sitting down to think through who it is that you need to recognize. Who do you want to find more of them. So there's a strategy behind it. But just thinking about who you are, but also who they are. And I put that needs encouragement one there. I always think about that even in my personal life. I'm someone who likes to get recognized every once in a while, but most of the time, if you don't tell me thank you, I'm going to think, well, they were thankful because I did it for them. I'm good. I'm going to move on with my life. Needs encouragement, if I don't say, thank you for doing this, you got it to me on time, that meant so much. I think of my little sister. My little sister needs that. Like, it's part of, she's an amazing coordinator. She does a huge development work now for nonprofit. If I don't reinforce along the way how much I appreciate her, it's not that she starts to say, don't you appreciate this? I just see her spiral. She doesn't feel like it mattered. She needs that constant just, thank you, that mattered. Thank you, that mattered. That's not my normal persona. So we rub there because I just don't think to say it. Not that I'm being mean, it just doesn't cross my radar. So like that piece of how and what matters and what the power of a feeling behind a thoughtful word. I think a lot of that we want to bear in mind as we think through these next 3 slides. Enneagram, I think, is another one. I know we talked about that as a group, like the Enneagram, if you haven't studied it, was it Court, were you the one mentioning we've got an article about that? Or there's a piece we've done recently that I think plays into this so well.
Yeah, we've got a great article that talks about leading your volunteers by understanding their Enneagram type, because it really helps to understand their motivations, like why they're there and what sorts of positions they thrive in, and also how they really enjoy being recognized as well.
Well, yeah, that'll be a link maybe we can share afterwards. As we go to the next one, so thinking about recognition strategy and finding a process. Again, not that you're to copy down all of this, but I think you want to think through just a strategy behind what you can maintain and what does the process look like for you. So rethinking, what is something that's a volunteer appreciation gift that I could give? This is also based off of an article that we have that has in-depth ideas that are each of these categories, but thinking about how you can invest in your volunteers, maybe it's helping them get more education or skills-based training. How can you recognize your volunteers in a way that would matter to them, that feels comfortable to them? How do you think of a different way to incorporate appreciation events so that maybe they are small or large? How do you have something intentional right now for Appreciation Week, but how do you build something sustainable so everyone is feeling that thank you throughout the year? I threw this in. It was just some ideas that actually came out of a piece that we're working on from an HR perspective, because I think employee engagement and retention is kind of that big cultural focus we all have right now, because we're seeing that as so critical. This is HR. This is not a volunteer program, but I think it's that moment of starting to think about your volunteer is just as important as your employee, because they're hitting a portion of your flow chart for your organization that matters, because it's taking up a salaried position at times, or it's relieving a budgetary item. So thinking about how do we invest here and making it something that, again, is practical, that you can keep going year round. So maybe it is that handwritten note. Maybe it is having something where the teammates or the employees are coming together to write something or recognize something about that volunteer that matters to them. A wall of fame for a volunteer that can go up on a wall so they get that spotlight. Again, not necessarily one size fits all. Maya might not want to have herself spotlighted on a wall. Nate might not want to be standing on a stage and everybody clapping for him. Like those moments of like, what would actually appeal to them? Asking them, what's a way that you would like to recognize you've mattered to me this year? I want to do something nice for you. Is there anything that matters? I think that piece is just so powerful. And then communicating impact. So this is the 3 pieces that I think we'll want to really focus some of the panel discussion around. Everyone's trying to figure out recruitment. How do I keep them engaged? How do I do retention? So I think when you're doing, and I phrased this, I think, to the group when we were talking earlier, is kind of the cherry on top. For recruitment, if I can thank you in a way that lets me also share the impact you made to our organization, let you look like the star you are in front of a personal group so that you're bringing more of that volunteers circle of influence, because those volunteers probably have people in their lives that are similar to them, care the way they care, want to do the things that they do, may just invite the advocacy. You just got recognized for this. Tell me about what you've been doing. That piece of recognizing people in front of their family and friends, that's a recruitment tool. Engagement. How do I tell a story that recognizes and appreciates someone, but does it in way that I'm also sharing a goal, and I'm showing that we're progressing as a group of volunteers toward reaching and accomplishing that. So we're all excited, we're doing it, and we're hearing the story along the way. And then retention. I think this is the part where we talked about those volunteers that are just so critical. They come in every single day, rain or shine. They're long-term. They've always been there. They're basically an employee at this point. They're well-trained. They'll go out and recruit for you. They're probably added to your donation pool. Those retention of those people so that you don't face burnout, so that they know that they matter, so they keep coming in every single day. What does that look like? Because if you can focus on that retention element, the recruitment starts to be less on the radar. The engagement is there, but it's engagement over the long term. So I think all of this plays together. To give a few just quick examples, this is a local nonprofit in our area that's Brother Wolf. They do a shelter for animals. But I think the piece here is just, it's a story. They've got a newsletter that goes out, so they're communicating what they've been doing. They've got a big, bold goal of how many hours they did in 1 month. It gives you this idea of who went out on hikes with the Outward Hounds Hiker Club. They've got cats and dogs getting love. So everybody feels really good about it. But if I was one of the ones that gave love to the cats and dogs, I feel appreciated. They recognize that that activity mattered. That goal and progress toward goals. What are we doing together? How can you convey that? And then thinking about just those stories, the story element, a testimonial, a reference, we're in need of a secretary, this is what we got. This came out of Get Connected to Erie, it's United Way over in Pennsylvania. So it's just kind of letting people see what it is you're doing, what they might share, somebody being recognized in a way that also recruits other people to do the same thing because they want this story like that for themselves to also feel connected. So panel discussion is going to start. I'm going to tease this slide real quick because this is just, I think, some of what Gina brings to play is she has a marketing eye. So I think, in talking to her, she does some really creative things with our software. So I just wanted to show this. This is her site, Art of Illinois, but it is that moment of kind of putting the volunteers out there as a superhero and building that strategy around them being heroes to the community, which I think is one of the really powerful ways that you kind of flip the focus from the projects and the impact to the humans that are doing the progress and the impact. So with that kind of lead into our panelists, Court, I will let you take it away. And I'm probably going to just stop sharing my screen so faces can get a little bit more screen time, and then we'll pop back into the screen later.
Absolutely. I love it. I absolutely love, and Gina, I'll go ahead and pose the question to the panel, but I'll ask you to answer first, if that's okay, because we did just take a little sneak peek at some snippets of your volunteer site. And I love that you, as Elizabeth was saying, start off on that foot of you're already telling them exactly what you think of them, how you feel about them before they've even signed up, or if they're coming back to sign up again. So my first question to the panel is, what is your definition of volunteer appreciation? What does it really mean to you?
For us, it's making sure that they felt like they shared their time and that it was worth it. And of course, what Elizabeth said, they like to come back again. But you want them to make sure, I've done presentations about this to different groups in the community. And the one thing I think sometimes people forget is that volunteering is a social activity. It's not necessarily part of your job. It's not part of taking care of your family and your kids. You're giving up your personal social time to give your time to another organization. And you want to make sure that it was appreciated, that they feel welcomed and they feel like they're part of your team and they made a difference.
Love it. Thank you. Maya, would you like to go next?
Definitely. So I think that volunteer appreciation is both an action, right? So you're doing specific things during Volunteer Appreciation Month. So everyone who's here is already ahead of the game as far as those actions go. But I also think it's a culture that you will infuse within your entirety of your volunteer program. So, how do you make sure that you are valuing the time of your volunteers, both when they are getting onboarded into being a volunteer, once they're actually doing the service, and then how do you communicate how they were impactful, to kind of echo what Elizabeth said earlier. There's definitely specific, ideals and values that you can infuse volunteer appreciation just beyond April as well.
Love it. I love what you said about volunteer appreciation as a culture. That's amazing. And Elizabeth, what would you add to that, especially from speaking from our network's perspective?
My headspace was first just, I think, you guys hit so well on the personal. I think there's a part of making sure that what matters to the organization is also becomes personal to them. So the thought that like they walk in the door, I'm there to volunteer and connect and do something that I'm going to feel good about, that's going to matter. And me remembering to sign in and say how long I was on site, or me remembering to record the time, that doesn't matter to me as a volunteer at all. But that purposeful, like, we appreciate you because you helped us win this grant this year. We were able to show this many hours of service because of you. And we just got a $10,000 grant to do even more of it this next year. Thank you. I think it's sometimes taking, what they said goes hand in hand with personal, and then tying that personal step to not just their experience that day, but what they've now driven forward for your organization so you can do so much more good. I think that's a really secondary piece I like.
Oh, definitely, Elizabeth. I like the idea, and it's sometimes I think a little bit overlooked, is that one of the stakeholders of the success of your volunteer program and your organization at large are in fact your volunteers, not just, the clients that you may serve or the population that you're affecting, but the people who are helping you do the work.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say,
Go
so-
for it, Gina.
So I was like thinking about this today, and overall we have probably like 10,000 volunteers a year that we engage, depending on how close they are to us in terms of, are they my committee, or they're board, or they, and it keeps going out from there. So we get the community engagement part of it. But I thought about this, we raise $9 million a year for our organization, but we only have 14 staff members. So if we didn't have the volunteers and we didn't appreciate them and make them feel like they're engaged, we wouldn't be able to do that work every year. So that's why they're so important to our organization. So
That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing. That's an amazing statistic, and also shows sort of the roots of that relationship and community of culture, and like how we can accomplish big things together with the right people and the right tools and the right mindset and all of these things. So that brings me to my next question, which, some of us are wondering what to do, but sometimes we also need to know what doesn't really work, or what hasn't worked, or what would make volunteer appreciation ineffective. I think that often that gives a perspective that helps us kind of understand and grapple, because the way that this is going to work within each organization and within different groups of volunteers will be different. So what have you experienced that felt really ineffective on the volunteer appreciation front?
I can go ahead and kind of dive into this. So I would not characterize it as negative at all. I think it's actually a good thing. But ineffective in advancing your mission and kind of helping your volunteer program succeed is different. So I think definitely encouraging your volunteers in the moment when you see them, kind of speaking to the work that they're doing in the here and now is important. But as far as effectiveness, I think you could have the ability to lose out on a lot of relationships that you can nurture if you're not looking at the entirety of your volunteer base. And that might include someone who only volunteered one time this year, but that also could include some volunteers who are seasonal, who maybe were here during the winter, but Volunteer Appreciation Month is now. So it's then saying, how do I continually appreciate, both in this important time of Volunteer Appreciation Month, but also as systemically, like how do you do those automations, and how do you make sure that everyone gets what they need taken care of?
Dogs completely agree with what she just said there. There's just
That's why I stepped away for a moment, was to get her out. It's part of working remotely. You've got fur
friends. Yeah, I think Gina, you shared something the other day that was interesting. It was kind of reflective for us, if you've been joining for a few of these seminars or webinars, whatever it is we do, that hopefully it's helping all of you. We talked a little bit about, you can't know everything. You can't find out everything about a volunteer. So you've got to kind of focus on, I know my organization needs these 3 things. How do I figure out if this volunteer might have a talent in one of those areas or an interest in one of those areas. I know you had mentioned someone who helped with kind of a historical archiving, but how do you kind of address that when you are compressed in time? You can only do so much. How do you learn who each of these volunteers are so you can effectively move them forward based on them and not just like hoping the path is going to be a one size fits all?
So that's where you come into. So if you look at like my more, like my more intimate volunteers, is probably not the right word for it, but those ones that are like my marketing committee. Some members of my marketing committee, I've been here for 20 years. Some of them have been here on my marketing committee longer than I've been here. So those are pretty easy to do. And a lot of them I've been friends with for over the years too. But it's really, especially when you have those smaller groups, because that's only about 10 people. It's going, meeting with them, having coffee, talking with them. It's even just those little times before your meeting starts where you get a chance to talk about personal stuff. We make sure that we're not talking shop all the time in our meetings, to get to know them personally and what they do. And then, Chris, you also know too, because our volunteer base are employees. They're employees of different organizations. And so from that standpoint, we also know kind of what their skill set is from where they work. And so that's another way we tap into and be able to appreciate them. And I think that's an important part of the appreciation process too, is making sure that they're doing things they feel that's rewarding, because then that they're going to appreciate that more too if they're called upon. I have volunteers, like I said, that was our 100th anniversary this year. They love going through old newspapers and articles and films and stuff with me. Other ones where they help me set up and put flowers out for the party. It just depends what they're more interested in. But it's a lot of personal relationship building.
That's amazing. I love that. Really, too, the appreciation starts with how you're taking them through the whole process of even just the tasks that they're doing, or like this shift of service. That is a way of appreciating people, is actually paying attention to what they like to do and not just kind of putting them wherever, just because we need, people to fill those roles. So that's really interesting. I love that. And the more you get to know them. So would you say, is that the most effective ways you've been able to develop volunteer appreciation, or what are those most effective ways that you've been able to develop your volunteer appreciation program?
I think one of the most effective ways is our organization as a whole is very outcome driven. In terms of what we do for our grant process. And we have around 200 volunteers to help us with our grant process every year. But we're very outcome driven. And so I think that it's very important. And when we do training sessions with our local volunteer managers, because if you don't know what I do, part of my community engagement is we actually have an online volunteer center. We use Get Connected and Galaxy Digital for that. And so one of the things we do when we train all of our local volunteer managers to build that capacity in our community and to build awareness and appreciation is tying everything they do back to the impact work of your organization. That's when we really start to see kind of like the light bulb go off for our volunteers. I have someone who's volunteered with me for years on and off doing little one-off things for events and stuff, but she's now chairing my marketing committee. And I brought her in to see our grant process to explain how we are changing and impacting like education for preschool students or whatever it was. She was like, it was like the light bulb went off and she understood and she was like, okay, yeah, I'm just chairing the marketing committee. But then she finally understood in the grand scheme of things, how that's actually impacting the community. So that's what we try to do with all of our capacity building that we do.
That's a really interesting point, Gina. And it kind of ties in with how when I was thinking about like comparatively to ineffective, what do I see as the most effective ways to develop volunteer appreciation? Elizabeth touched on it a little bit, but previously coming to Get Connected, I spent a large part of the last decade working in nonprofit management and volunteer coordination. And during that time, I actually worked with a volunteer free clinic. So I had two different types of volunteers, volunteers who were maybe retired providers, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners who had the time during the day to serve with clinic, and our family medicine residency program. So doctors in training, right? So a lot of the time I leaned on both my volunteers to kind of inform how they would want to be appreciated. In that context, it's quite easy, right? There's some plug in kind of Doctor's Day, Nurses Day to engage with there. But the other part was working with a younger of medical professionals meant that a lot of the times that the way that they wanted to be appreciated was things like sending them funny gifts or explaining, that there was coffee comparatively to maybe some of my volunteers who were retired, who were excited for breakfast. My residents were not up that early. So I think definitely allowing your volunteers to help you innovate and engage with the population that you serve them, is a great plan there.
Maya, you make a good point too. I think it's discovering how they like to be communicated with. I talk about that a lot with our volunteer managers at our agencies and ourselves. I have one volunteer, her and I've got to be really good friends over the years. We literally send each other stupid memes like 3 times a week. And then I have like the other day, I'm like, can you help me with something for this event coming up? So she likes that. She's a little bit younger than me. We like to just text each other, but some of my volunteers, they want, and I love to do a beautiful handwritten note. Some of them want Mark Dorkey, Live United superhero shirts. They all want different things or different ways to be communicated. And that's depending on the size of your volunteer pool, that can be easy or hard to figure out how you're going to do that process. So.
Oh, definitely. I have a previous volunteer that we send TikToks back and forth all the time.
Or do you want to grab us another question or? keep going with
Yes.
this one?
So I felt like Gina brought up a really great point too. Depending upon how large or small your volunteer base is, it can become maybe a little more complicated to really meet people where they're at. Some organizations might have the capacity to meet or talk with folks one-on-one, and some may not. And so then you're dealing with this very sort of intricate system of how do you meet all these folks where they're at. So this is a big question actually, but what were the necessary tools, systems, tweaks, or changes you really have had to make to be able to create a sustainable system of volunteer appreciation throughout the year? Because I know we can all make a big push for the April event, right? And doing that can be great and exciting, and there's high energy, and then occasionally it can deplete you if you do quite a lot. But then how do you actually create something really sustainable so that it's an ongoing process throughout the year and it really becomes kind of your greatest retention tool bag, actually, because people feel so good when they're volunteering with your organization? So that's a big question, but I'll go ahead and leave it to you on the panel.
I'll start just to say, I think it's, and I'd love to hear what you guys have done for like actual award ideas, but like thinking about an award that then is something that everyone is focused on to a degree, because you're giving them ideas and you're giving them measurements throughout the year so that they kind of can see that they're earning toward it for the next year, whether it's like somebody who did the biggest change idea that they brought to the table, or somebody who just put in the most hours, or what is it that you found that was like, this is the pinnacle, and now we've got a pool of people that are kind of, we can show them their progress toward it for year 2.
That's an interesting point. So when I think about tools, I think one of the things that was the biggest tool in my tool belt, and I see in the chat someone's kind of already spoken to it, is having an onboarding process where I'm getting the most information that I can from the volunteer in an appropriate way, right? Collecting data at the right points, whether that's after their first kind of interaction, when they're first kind of applying to be a volunteer, or whether that's after they've volunteered for the first time and I want to get that initial kind of take. That's really important. And a lot of that is helpful to automate as far as emails and stuff going out. However, I also found when I was working with one of our clients that I was helping to onboard, that they were starting a new volunteer program, and I think this was for a local theater. And so it's kind of shift-based ushers who are going and doing those sorts of things. He was also implementing a volunteer rewards program so that at specific levels, they were getting a t-shirt for how many hours they submitted. If they brought in another volunteer, there was an ability for them to say, you're getting a pin to say you're being great, that they were able to wear on their usher badge, right? And then I think tracking all of that data, like how many hours people did, who brought in volunteers, right? Allowed them to say, this is our community stretcher award, or that's not the right word, but our community expansion award, or this is our, make more friends award, something that's a little less traditional, but still is data based.
Well, when you guys asked me to join this panel, the thing that really stuck out to me the most was the word prep or preparing, because we really look at National Volunteer Week, National Volunteer Month, whatever you want to, how you want to do it. You look at it as an opportunity to kind of take a step back, see where we're at with everything, and look at those benchmarks. How do we want to set that? What's our calendar going to be for the year? How do we build enough capacity for all of our volunteers in our community? And then we sit there and we look at it, because I am the marketing person. That's the fun part, is we use National Volunteer Month is to do all the public types of stuff that we do. So we have all sorts of little fun things. We do social media posts, we highlight volunteers, we highlight testimonials of volunteers in our print materials we plan for the rest of the year. Then during National Volunteer Week, we try to do little things where we call them out for, special little, like they've really gone above and beyond. That's kind of how we do it. And we do stuff year round. So some volunteers are cyclical or seasonal based on what their task is for us. So they have a tendency to get thanked during that time frame. We make personal calls to them, for example. So like when our campaign wraps up for fundraising, our board members call all of the campaign coordinators at the companies that help volunteer and run their workplace campaigns. They get a personal call from our board members. So we do a lot of little personal things like that on a mass scale. And then I'm wearing some of the fun bling today. You saw our superhero thing. So we do I know it's bad angle. Anyway, we have really nice superhero shirts that we give out. That's a part of appreciation and recognition. We do as a kind of a combo of you get recognized, and we hope to get you a little more engaged and a little more and retain you to come back to volunteer. You get the special shirts. We have little. Gina is an awesome volunteer. We have little name badges we give out and masks to all of our volunteer partners that are nonprofits. And then, of course, we have today I volunteered, but in between it says, I can remember what it says. I had fun. I got creative. I shared my time. I joined a team. I made an impact. Today I volunteered. And so we give out little, you think they're stickers. They're not that expensive. But, if you're dealing with 10,000 volunteers a year and they're working not necessarily directly for you, but for your affiliates, it's nice to be able to give them something they can recognize people with. And we do what Elizabeth says too. We have awards every year for different categories. We have an unsung hero award that we give out. They can't be a member of our board or cabinet because they get a lot of recognition, but it's the unsung hero, and it's a criteria that they work behind the scenes. And so it's a fun thing to give out every year too. So
I know we talked a little bit before. That sticker just talked to my memory. Like, I love that. I think you were the one who was saying it's kind of like the I voted sticker. Like, it just shows participation. Like, it's huge. I shared in a very touching moment about my kittens going to the vet for the very first time, where they had actually measured them in front of a board. Like, this is how big your kitten is. And of course they do it with kittens, but they put it on their Facebook page. So I was telling the group, like, I don't follow vets, but I followed their Facebook page because I wanted to see the picture of my kittens get posted. And so they built this social network around me where, encouraging them to take a picture with their sticker and then knowing that they're going to get tagged in it and getting permission to do that, so that then now their social network is seeing them doing the thing. And they're like, what is that you did? That's huge when it comes to recruitment and to just getting, a silly little sticker that probably is one of the best investments you've ever made, Gina. Like, that's really cool.
And it has a hashtag on it too.
Will you read the sticker again, Gina? Because we have a lot of requests in the chat to read the sticker again. And actually,
if I can hold one up for you.
Design the stickers?
What's that?
Did you all design the sticker?
Yes, yeah, we can share it. And I have a company I order from that's pretty reasonable. They actually print them a little crooked. But so it says today, which is big, and the volunteered is bigger and bolder at the bottom. It has our logo nice and tiny on there, and it has all our hashtags and stuff at the bottom. But in between today I volunteered, it said, had fun, got creative, shared my time, joined a team, made an impact. So that's one of the little things.
That's the warm fuzzies. I love it.
Yeah. And then we have a lot of our partners, we have about 50, you guys probably know, but we have like 50 or 53 nonprofit partners in our online volunteer center. And so they're always looking at a way to have name tags and stuff, and people save these. I think it's the cutest thing ever, but it's just a name tag that says Gina is an awesome volunteer, and it matches our superhero theme you saw earlier in our site. So it all goes back together again. So little things you can
Got
share.
I've got an interesting question from someone in the chat. Can I
Mhm.
read it to the panel? So Laura says, can I get some ideas on how to create a culture or system? I onboard the volunteers, think a very robust HR process, and then I pass them off to their volunteer supervisor, mentor, coordinator, sports coordinator, and then that person is their main contact as a volunteer, and I don't have much to do with them. How do I maintain a touch on the pulse of the volunteer program in this situation? And the volunteer supervisor is a staff member. So any help there for Laura on how would you do that, maintain that pulse? Would you use a survey, or what other tools or systems would you use?
So that's a really great question. And this is part of what I do on the day-to-day is I love getting to break apart questions like these. I think it depends, right? The first thing that I would think of is having the ability to track your volunteers, right? Having an identifier for them and seeing in real time when they're logging hours, when they're doing any sort of action is going to be a one up there. So being able to say, you know, I'm thinking of a name, Madison is being onboarded by this program manager, but I, as the volunteer coordinator or as the kind of volunteer director, get to see still what's going on. So if Madison has an increase in a bunch of hours, it's able to say, oh, great, you know, I haven't heard from her. Maybe it's time for me to give her a call, right? The other piece that I think of kind of instilling a culture of volunteer appreciation and making sure, you know, you're able to track the volunteer through the next process is always giving a volunteer the next step very easily, right? So if it's, you know, once you've onboarded them, they know that the obvious next step is to, you know, sign up for an event or sign up for an opportunity. And then once they sign up for that opportunity, they got the survey. And then at the end of the survey, it prompts them right back to sign up again. Or in that kind of case, right, maybe you send out a year-end survey and say, if you had an experience that you want to chat about, you know, we'd love to learn more about that. And I think having the ability to one, put a little pin in them is the first step for sure.
And I totally agree with Maya too. We have it as part of our process to follow up with them. So once they go on their merry way to wherever they're going, whether it's a large team going to an agency or if it's one person individually going to another committee in our organization, we always have in our process, you know, I try to do it depending on what it is, within like a few weeks or maybe like within a month or within like a quarter. And then I'm also like to track where they're going. So sometimes if I'm placing a large team somewhere, even if it's a small team, I will just pop out to that agency and meet with that coordinator in person for that team, and then meet some of their team members and talk to them directly. So if you kind of know what their schedule is and when they're coming in, if you can just stop by like, hey, I know I onboarded you, if you did it via Zoom, or if you did it in person, or it was a large, you know, maybe it's like it was a large meeting where you onboarded them, or there's a chance to kind of meet them one-on-one and see them in person and stop by and talk to them. So that's what we do a lot.
That is, I think that's also really interesting, Gina, is not only to track them as an individual, but, and I think that could be helpful in your robust HR kind of ish onboarding process, is getting information about what groups and what organizations they're involved with from the get-go, right? Because then not only can you plug them in to maybe the program that they'll be volunteering in, but maybe you already have a relationship with their congregation, or maybe you already have a relationship with their school. And then it's appreciation on a different level, right? You can appreciate the institution to say, hey, you guys are really fostering a service in your community.
So here's my shameless plug for Galaxy Digital, because this is why I love having a Get Connected platform. And we've grown a lot. I mean, we launched it in our online volunteer center, online volunteer community in October 2017. We now have 3 university partners in our community, trying for a 4th. But what's nice about that is I know who the fans are of all those nonprofits. I know where they volunteer before. I know I can see their interests and abilities. I can see what agencies they like better and others, where they've gone before. And we use that data all the time. Even when someone reaches out to me, you know, I'll have nonprofits reach out to me like, I need a volunteer for this, or what do I do with this? And that's how we use all that data for that. And that's how we set our benchmarks in our system for hours and for the types of recognition they get automatically. I don't know how many times we have those automatic messages that go out to all those team volunteers, and those I'll say thank you. It looks like it looks like I sat and gave them a personal little email message thanking them for, dear Sally, thank you for volunteering at Center for Prevention of Abuse today. And they'll write me back, say, thank you, I had a great time doing it. I can't wait to volunteer again. And so that's where when you start to have that capacity, you need to be able to have a system in place to automate some of those personal touches as much as you can.
I was going to chime in on that. Thank you for that, Gina. I was going to also say get connected by Galaxy Digital, but I think, no matter what software or what process you're using, it's make a process. Because I think what you just alluded to that was so powerful is like, you know what you're looking for. So, in the software, yes, it does like say, who's done the most hours this month. So I can look at that. And if my process is, I'm going to review hours tracked each month, and I'm going to recognize the top 2 people, I'm going to do a phone call to the bottom 2 to see what does this rung look like? Are they just not engaged yet? Were they frustrated by the available time slots? So kind of picking your highs and your lows to learn from them so that you can help that median all move higher. I think those things like most hours served, which skills base, which causes, once you start to get into your data, you can't look at it all. So it's really like picking what's sustainable that I'm going to each month review so that, as you were just saying, I can pick what my new benchmark will be, because I'm seeing this is really working for a bunch of people and it's not working. This other one I'm going to eliminate. It was a lot of busy work for me and it didn't seem to matter to anybody. So I think getting that feedback and having your sustainable routine is really key. There's definitely automations like thank you emails and things like that software can do. But I think that human automation of automating yourself to just stick to a routine where you are building a trend line over time, no matter what your process is, I think that's so critical to make it. Otherwise, you're just jumping around. You're watching and you're trying to react. And every month you're reacting again, instead of saying, if I stay the course, what is this going to look like in month 6? How is this year compared to 2017 look? I can look at that because I tracked those 3 critical data points versus trying to watch everything.
Exactly. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, Eugene, I think you might be saying the same thing that I'm saying.
I don't know. I was going to say, what Elizabeth's talking about is we've been doing that, and we show it's what's nice is that we've been able to do that, and it's a way to thank the volunteers and show appreciation, but it's a way for us to look at National Volunteer Month as a National Volunteer Week as a way to set our strategy for the rest of the year. And that's also too why I think we're going to get a $20,000 grant for our volunteer engagement efforts in our community, so we can expand upon the stuff we're doing, because we're able to look at that, and it's not just, oh, we're recruiting volunteers. We have a purpose for what we're doing. So, and I saw something in the chat too. So sorry, Maya, you go ahead. So.
Oh no, so we actually had different thoughts, but I'm glad yours is very interesting. The thing that I really like about instilling appreciation, and you are kind of utilizing that data in a grant sort of way, but I think that data can kind of help strategically as well. So when I'm thinking about recruiting volunteers, you might have some of your volunteers that come in low barrier, right? They sign up, they sign just your basic waiver, and do maybe a one-day volunteer thing. The more that you appreciate those volunteers, the more that those volunteers I feel like are going to be willing to jump higher barriers. Maybe that's filling out an application, maybe that's taking a specific training, but they start to believe and are a stakeholder of your community and your organization. So the more you get them involved, the more of an advocate they'll be for your organization.
We have some really exciting questions coming in through the chat. So I'm going to do a little rapid fire here and see if we can answer some of those, and some of them too. My hope is that we'll do some follow-up resources as well, because I know we've got about 15 minutes left, but I want to get to as many of these as possible because they're really great questions. Number one, who's got any tips or tricks on actually getting volunteers to really fill out their survey? We've got someone who says they've been posting a satisfaction survey on their monthly newsletter, but can't figure out how to get people to do it. So I have a couple of thoughts on that, but I'm really curious in your experience, what that has gone like.
I will sometimes change the avenue of how I'm sending the survey. So of course, you post it in as many places as feels appropriate. I think this kind of leans back to knowing your volunteers, right? If they would prefer the survey sent out in something that they can access on their phone, like a text, or something that is kind of quickly sent to their email, that makes a lot of sense. But I also think that incentivizing the survey is not always an awful idea.
No.
I will sometimes say, if you volunteered this month, and and it depends on your resources, right, as the team, but you can also say, if you volunteered this month, we're going to pick one person who did the survey to give a gift card. And if that's not within your resources, then maybe it's saying we want to pick some person who's done the survey to highlight in our newsletter, right? So finding things that are accessible to your team.
What she said, that's exactly what we do. Yep.
I was reading the comment in the chat, Court, that I think Tori just put. I think this is a really good one because I've experienced it as a volunteer. And I think it's one that you can actually build into a little bit more of the deliverable back to, especially to the company or the school or a group that's come through, is to do a little bit of just a prompt at the beginning of the volunteer experience where they're all writing down like what they thought about food insecurity and what's one thing they would want to work on in their personal communication styles. Something that's very core competency, one that's very like what I'm trying to learn about this cause. And then doing an exit survey, which is what Tori's point was, like, while you've got them captured, what should we improve for our next volunteer group? But then how did your thinking change on food insecurity based on our project today? And then having that piece where you're saying to them, what do you feel you're going to be able to take back to your company environment from this experience that will change how you are an employee? And I'm alluding to this just really as a teaser, but that is powerful because that shows a company, you had an employee experience that they might use for retention of that employee, for core competency growth for that employee, to show that team budget could be used for communication training with a nonprofit versus just in-house doing a made-up experience. So I think those pieces can give you a deliverable that's really powerful.
For sure. And talking just practical steps, I loved seeing Tori say, let them do it right then and there. That's a great idea. And one thing that you could even do with that is take the link to the survey and put it in a QR code. 2021, 2022 has been the year of the QR code. So them being able, as they're walking out, see the survey, scan it, take it right then and there. Low barrier.
And
go
ahead, Gina.
I was gonna say, and you think, oh, we're talking about data and we're talking about surveys and things like that, but that still makes the volunteer feel appreciated. They're going to feel like I did learn something today. I did contribute. They're going to feel appreciated because you're wanting their input, and so it goes back to that same concept of appreciation, I think. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think too that we're doing a lot of this communication virtually and also using some of these technology tools, even if you're on site. So we're in a very hybrid environment. Virtual volunteerism isn't going away. Nonprofits have started utilizing technology more than ever to automate some of these processes that we've been talking about. And really it's supposed to be there to help you with the human touch. So, and making contact with that person. So we've got a really great question from Jamie Brown. Still living in a mostly virtual world for our volunteers, what unique ideas can you share about appreciation in this sense? We do videos, mail them thank yous, gifts, any new approaches that have been successful? So that's the question from Jamie. I'll let the panel answer that.
So I am currently working, or I've worked with a client before that they run a helpline. And so they've now transitioned all of their volunteers to virtual. That was prior to kind of the onset of virtual volunteerism as a need. One of the things that they do that I thought was very smart is they have kind of Zoom happy hours, right? It could be lemonade, it could be anything else that they will have volunteers kind of join and just chat about. And they've even done like state of the organization conversations to just say, hey, like this is what we're doing this month. We were excited to talk to you about that. And then another thing that I saw that I thought was very helpful in kind of this virtual world is if someone does complete virtual volunteerism, you can Zoom them right then and there to say like, how did it go? How are things working? I think that's also something that I thought was really powerful for them. And it also, especially if you're working in volunteerism that is maybe a little bit more sensitive, it allows your volunteers kind of the emotional space to process maybe whatever they did during their service, which is important.
We do the same thing with, like you said, with the Zoom and stuff like that. And especially our young professionals really like that. And I don't think it's going to go away. I know we're trying to slowly go back into person, but I don't think it'll go away. And then maybe it's because of marketing standpoint, but we do try to do as much as we can with social media. I think Ron mentioned or is it Ron that mentioned it? Yes. We have e-newsletters and stuff too that we do. So when I talked earlier about trying to get testimonials and quotes from our volunteers, we do that if they want to. That way that, we don't force them to do it, but that's a way for us to be able to share and give them a little highlight. We try to get a fun photo of them or have them submit a fun photo to us. If they want to give us little bios and personal information, we'll do that too. And then we share that out electronically. And that's the easiest way to do it. So.
I love it. I've got another question here. This one is non-digital thank yous, but it says, what do you think are some good gift giveaway ideas for volunteers? I work at an academic hospital and majority of our volunteers are students and prospective healthcare professionals, ages 16 to 30, and they love receiving gifts. We have 170 volunteers. That's quite a lot. So any creative ideas there?
Again, I think that depends on your resources. I am a child of Lisa Frank notebooks and things. So the sticker ideas, I'm like, yes, give me a sticker. I think that could be something that's relatively, not going to take up a ton of your resources. I think gifts higher than that. Everybody loves a t-shirt. Everybody loves a mug. But one thing I also saw that was really great recently was I like phone wallets. Somebody had stuck a phone wallet on the back of their phone, if we're talking specifically.
It's a cool tie-in. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I've had one before. There was a cool time. I think they made a magnet out of it, but it's taking like a participant's thank you. So if there is, especially if it's a child that has a participation element, having a drawing that they've done, having a thank you message from them that can be something that's more permanent so that it is on a magnet or it is on something that they're going to stick somewhere, lets it have a long-term effect. And it's not just the item being appreciation, but like the message on the item lets it kind of even feel more intentional because they're there because they cared about that recipient. And so they want to feel that the recipient appreciated them and that it mattered what they did. So I love tying those messages into the items where possible.
Yeah, and we do that for like all of our really big gifts. Like if we're giving our campaign chair at the end of the year who helped raise all the money for the year, they get a really nice custom personalized special gift. But I saw someone just posted, was it Krista? Am I seeing the name right? I'm a big fan of practical gifts. We don't spend a lot on things, but I love the stickers too. Actually, I can show you one of the things we did. So our 100th anniversary year. You guys probably can't see this, but I got these on sale. They're like a special notebook that we have. They're embossed with our logo, and then there's a special commemorative bookplate inside of it for back to the stickers. Back to our 100th anniversary. Our volunteers love these things, and they didn't cost us maybe like $2 or $3 a piece for that. Then we do fun things like, I keep my cell phone next to me all the time. So we do little fun cell phone holders, things like that. So we look for things. So if it's in the medical field, they all have lanyards they'll need. I know everybody likes, if there's not a regulation, they like putting buttons and pins and stuff, things on their lanyards and their badges, things like that you could do. Things that are practical, that they will have your little, especially marketing your names on it too, and you put it out there. So practical gifts all the way. We always do that.
I really love those keychains and carabiners too, because I use them for my keys, especially for me. I've done a lot of volunteer work at equine nonprofits. And so you're out on the farm, you're in the field, and I can tell you I've lost keys before. So I love anything that's going to help me keep my keys. And probably a lot of the resources for some of these gifts, I'm guessing we find them online or some sort of print on demand resource. Is that what you use? Do you use local or national sort of resource?
Well, I have local contacts, I should say. Yes, so we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet a quick Google search can help you find something that's either near you where you can get these things
Yeah.
worked. And if you work with a local business, you might even be able to get some of these things sponsored. It's very possible. I think that would be sort of the benefit of working with a local business and a local sponsor as well.
Yeah. All of our shirts are sponsored. The sponsor logo is on the back for them. So yeah, so we do all of that. Yeah.
I think I've seen
seen
that
one
sponsor
done.
with the reusable grocery bags, which was another one
Yes.
that
Yeah. Or
That
even
was
things that
the-
make their volunteering easier. If there's something that if it's those volunteers that come back all the time, do they want their own mug? Do they want their own travel mug, or was it something that they can use in their recurring role as a volunteer too? So
yeah, the reusable grocery bags were for a food insecurity nonprofit. So
yeah, perfect. Mhm.
I've seen those $5 gift cards too that are 5. They're not a big increment, but it's into like a local coffee shop. So like, again, like a local business can get hopefully new person coming in to buy from their business, but they'll give those to you as an incentive and it makes it a gift card. So it feels like a gift that you're giving versus just a coupon.
Well, we are in the last couple of minutes here on our time, and it has gone by. I really feel like I could talk to everyone here all day because y'all are endlessly interesting to me, and you have so many great insights. And we've received so many wonderful questions. I think this is a really important topic and one that we'll continue to uncover. And again, we are here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital. We are not a nonprofit. We are a technology company that creates technology specifically for volunteer managers. Gina is one of our amazing clients who uses the Get Connected system to do a lot of what she's talked about, with automating this appreciation and really creating those benchmarks on how to kind of keep that conversation going with your volunteers. And it's really challenging when you are trying to leverage your time. We all only have so many hours a day, so much energy. We can't talk to everyone every single day, but what can you use as a tool or a system? And then use some of these great ideas that we've talked about today. Maya works with a lot of our volunteer managers on a weekly basis and brings her own experience. And as a volunteer manager, and Elizabeth works with our network. So she's also seeing so many organizations and volunteer managers just like you out all across North America. So we're just very grateful that you took the time to talk to us today. And thank you to our panelists. We are going to send out resources. So you'll get the recording, a bunch of the articles that Nate dropped. Nate's going to also put our contact information in the chat for you in case you would like to get in contact with us. And I just really, again, can't say thank you enough for taking the time out of your day. Gina, I know that you're very busy at Heart of Illinois, United Way, and we're just really grateful that you took the time to spend with us because your insights are just invaluable. So yes, thank you all so much. Is there anything that I've forgotten to say, Elizabeth, before we log off today?
I think I'm not going to do a screen share, but we do have a little homework prompt that Court can put into the follow-up for you all. That was just the reminders to find the types of volunteers you have. Make sure you got the right persona for the gift that you're thinking about or the engagement you're thinking about. And then challenge yourself, is it sustainable? If it's not sustainable, you can't keep it going. Don't let Gina feel really, really great and fancy. And then you get to Maya next month and she's like, what happened to my gift? Like, make sure it's sustainable. So I think that thing is really important. And then just keep that cherry on top in mind. If I can recruit with this, engage with this, promote with this, how can I tie what I'm doing into a bigger picture so I can also be touching on those if I can? Not everything has to. Some things are just meaningful to that one volunteer, and that's fine. But I think thinking through something that can have a bigger effect will help make the best use of your time. And yeah, I think that final thing that you said, Court, we just wanted to say thank you. If you guys haven't been thanked today, the volunteer appreciation happens because of all of you. And you guys are critical out there in the field every single day making it happen. So thank you to you as well for everything that you're doing in your communities with nonprofits and others just to make a difference for one person. That's what matters.
Absolutely. And y'all can come off mute and say your goodbyes. We're going to sign off for the day. Oh, I love it. Gina told everyone we're superheroes. I believe that. I love it so much. Thank you. And be looking for an email from me in the next few days. and we will see you next time. We've got another webinar coming up this spring, and we're going to talk about social media engagement for volunteer managers. So that's a part of appreciation too, where you can give some of those volunteers who love social media a little shout out on social media. So we'll keep that conversation going, and thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Everybody.
Everyone, thank you.